Thank you for joining us in This Week in Turkey. I am Murat, Türsan. Tonight, Turkey hosts the Antalya Diplomacy Forum to attempt to quell the flames in Ukraine. We will have the former Turkish ambassador to the United States, Faruk Loğoğlu, for analysis. The Turkish economy is tethering on the edge again, and we'll have economist Atilla Yeşilada to comment. CHP Chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu visits the predominantly Kurdish province of Diyarbakır, and Israeli President Herzog pays President Erdoğan a visit. Our first story tonight is the very heavy foot traffic at the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. The Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu hosted the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in an attempt to calm the hostilities between the two states, but to no avail. According to the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, an attempt to create a humanitarian corridor in Mariupol for the evacuation of civilians has failed, but Lavrov did mention that he would talk to higher-ups. Meanwhile, it's a busy week for President Erdoğan as he welcomes heads of states from all over the world. Is Turkey's position on the global stage shifting? And if so, where is it shifting to? We will have the former Turkish ambassador to the United States, Faruk Loğoğlu, to comment, but let's get the details first.
Hi again, Sergey. I remember this.
On the 15th day of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba met for an hour and a half in the province of Antalya, hosted by the Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu. Despite the high hopes from the Turkish Foreign Ministry, however, all sides left empty-handed as no solid resolution was reached. All three sides held press conferences after the fact. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba stated, "A tragic situation is currently taking place in Mariupol, and I came here for a humanitarian cause. My goal was to create a humanitarian corridor. Unfortunately, Minister Lavrov was not resolute on this issue." Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov confirmed that the trilateral meeting was held upon Turkey's request and agreed upon during a phone call between President Erdoğan and Russian President Putin. Minister Lavrov reiterated that they would honor all negotiation attempts and stated, "After today's meetings, it has become clear that nothing can replace these negotiations." Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu remarked, "The war continues. However, I can say that it was an extremely civilized meeting. There were no instances of tensions running high. In the meeting, we stressed that civilians caught in the crossfire should also be saved. Of course, for this, a substantial ceasefire must be established." Meanwhile, President Erdoğan has a busy schedule during the Diplomacy Forum. President Erdoğan is welcoming NATO General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg in Antalya today, after having welcomed Israeli President Isaac Herzog in Ankara on Wednesday. President Erdoğan also met with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev yesterday and had a phone call with President Biden. Erdoğan is also gearing up to meet Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis on Monday and Chancellor of Germany Olaf Scholz on Tuesday.
Joining me now for analysis, among many other esteemed titles, the former Turkish ambassador to the United States and 35-year veteran diplomat, Mr. Faruk Loğoğlu. Mr. Loğoğlu, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's our absolute pleasure. Now, Mr. Ambassador, the big story of the week, of course, is the meeting between Russia and Ukraine in the Antalya Diplomacy Forum. Ministers Lavrov and Dmytro from the Russian and Ukrainian sides, respectively, have attended these trilateral negotiations to stop the hostilities, though to no avail. It appears the war will rage on for now. Now, Turkey has been attempting to play intermediary between Russia and Ukraine even before the war. It was puzzling at the time why, but now that we see the economic devastation and the human devastation, it's a lot clearer. Now, first, do you think Turkey is being an effective intermediary in these negotiations? Does Turkey have anything that they can leverage? And is there anything they could perhaps be doing more or less of?
I think Turkey does have significant leverage because Turkey has been in a balanced approach in this crisis. I think it would be best to characterize it as active neutrality. That is, while you are not taking sides, but you are still playing an active role. And this I think, owes to the fact that first, it's a NATO country. Second, it's a regional country. Third, it has important relations with both Ukraine and Russia. And fourth, it has stressed the utility, the value of diplomacy rather than pouring fuel over the conflict, as many others have done so far. So I think Turkey's mediation efforts alone will not be enough, certainly, to bring peace between Ukraine and Russia, but it is paving the way toward more diplomacy, more engagement by others, using their offices, their role and assets to bring the conflict to an end. And I think in Antalya, a beginning was made, and Turkey will continue to pursue this balanced, active neutrality approach, and will at the end have made a contribution to the resolution of this conflict.
I see. And Mr. Ambassador, it's already been a busy week in Turkey's foreign affairs, and it's going to be busier still. While we're on the subject of Antalya Diplomacy Forum, there has been a lot of foot traffic. In addition, President Erdoğan had a phone call with President Biden. NATO General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg is paying a visit today, and we're also expecting Greek PM Mitsotakis and German Chancellor Scholz. Now, looking at all these high-level statesmen, one cannot help but wonder if Turkey's role in the world stage has begun to shift. No doubt, as global economic balances have been upended, foreign policies may also be subject to change in the meanwhile. Now, what is your current read of the situation? Are the balances of power shifting, and which side does Turkey fall on in all of this?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to make reference to the fact that the Antalya Diplomacy Forum is such an event, an important event in and of itself, but it comes at a time when the Ukraine crisis has occupied and has drawn the attention of all the world, especially the Western world, because the conflict is taking place in Europe itself. So I think the incredible traffic that we see is due to the fact that the timing of Antalya Diplomacy Forum coincides with the escalation of conflict in Ukraine. But it still, I think, points to the traffic, points to the rising importance or recognition of the importance of Turkey as a regional power, not only between East and West, but between North and South. And I think what we are seeing at the moment is a realization on the part of the Turkish government that Russia's loneliness approach of the last 10, 12 years has not really paid off to Turkey, neither in political or strategic or economic terms. So the turnaround is a recognition of the fact that Turkey's destiny really lies in the West, anchored in the West, but maintaining multidimensional relations with the rest of the world, including Russia and China.
Let us hope. Ambassador Mr. Faruk Loğoğlu, thank you for making sense of it all, and thank you for being able to join us tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And in the economy, crude oil prices are up over $100 a barrel, and Turks too are feeling it at the pump. Compare that to about $75 a barrel earlier this year. That's a pretty sharp increase. But it's not only crude oil, but cooking oil that's also up. Due to a Russian blockade of freight ships, sunflower seed oil hit as high as 1,000 liters for an 18-liter tank this week, causing a frenzy at the grocery stores. And just as we all thought that the lira had regained some stability, it looks like it's on the fritz again. What's going on in Turkey's already very delicate economy? Are we heading into yet another currency crisis? Renowned economist Atilla Yeşilada is up next to shed some light on the matter. But let's get to the details first.
As Ukraine continues to be under Russian siege and with no clear end in sight, Russia incurs heavy penalties for the invasion. However, as the Russian economy takes a massive blow, the Turkish economy goes unspared. Thus far, Turkey has been reluctant to engage in its own sanctions against Russia, while still suffering massively under Western sanctions itself. The Turkish lira sees another steady fall since the invasion, as it trades at over 14.5 against the dollar and above 16 against the euro. The cost of basic goods has increased substantially, notably sunflower seed oil, which is considered a staple basic food in Turkey. Stores were overrun by nervous shoppers this week as the price of sunflower seed oil hit over 1,000 liras per 18-liter tank due to a Russian blockade of freighters. Gas prices have also been going up every day. Starting from March 1st, pump gas was at 16.55 a liter, jumping to 18.68 on Monday, 19.26 on Tuesday, and 20.35 on Wednesday. Comparatively, a liter of gas was going at 7.23 a liter this same time last year, making it a 180% increase since 2021.
Her gün zam, baş edemiyoruz, hani fişler burada ortada. Yani 200 lira alırken şu an en basit sana göstereyim şöyle. İşte 500, ondan sonra 550, bu 2 gün önce zamdan önceki hali. Şu an 600.
Meanwhile, trade with Russia is at a complete halt. Businesses in Istanbul's textile district Laleli find themselves in deep financial trouble.
Yani şu anda Moskova Kiev'i vuruyor ama bir yandan Türkiye'yi de vuruyor.
Tabii şu an hiçbir şekilde para transferi yapılmıyor. Hiçbir şekilde ürün de götürülemiyor. Sınırda bekletiliyor.
Bir anda gelişen olaylar biz Laleli esnafı olarak, biz otelciler olarak, artı buradaki diğer esnaf arkadaş olarak gerçekten bizi bir şok etkisi yarattı. Aşağı yukarı 10 günden beri bu savaşın vermiş olduğu kayıplara baktığımız zaman Ukrayna bölgesinden, Rusya bölgesinden şu ana kadar aşırı şekilde bir iptaller aldık.
Joining me now, economist Atilla Yeşilada. Mr. Yeşilada is highly renowned in his field, among many other countless accolades, writes for Paranaliz, and has his own YouTube channel, chock full of top-level analysis. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and put his name into the search bar after this video. Mr. Yeşilada, glad to have you with us.
My pleasure to be here. Always enjoy your broadcasts.
Our pleasure is all ours. Now, Mr. Yeşilada, as we all know by now, Russia was a major trade partner with Turkey. And as if the COVID crisis, the supply chain crisis, and the lira crisis wasn't enough, now there is a crisis right above our heads in Ukraine. Inflation is up over 50%, depending on who you believe. Crude oil is up, regular cooking oil is up, so is gas, metals, innumerable other items. The world's major economies are trying to weather the storm as best they can as the U.S. attempts to control oil prices, and the Fed has been gearing up to tighten monetary policy for some time now, and might actually pull the trigger soon. Now, the question is, how hard is Turkey going to be hit by all of this, and which sectors do you think will suffer the most? Your thoughts?
I'm going to leave aside the politics of it and focus purely on the economy. There are essentially 4 channels through which the Ukraine war is going to act as a negative shock for the Turkish economy. Obviously, the first is the current account. That's our, trade deficit. We are going to pay more for energy this year, substantially more, maybe 100% more. But we're also an important of agricultural commodities, in particular grains, wheat, and sunflower. And most of the time, these come from, Ukraine and Russia. So leaving aside the ugly possibility of supply shortages, we're talking about, a deterioration in terms of trade, which means we are going to pay more for our imports, but our exports are not going to appreciate in dollar terms. The second way this crisis is very likely to expand the current account deficit is through tourism revenues. There is really a discussion not about how many Russian tourists will be able to visit Turkey, but whether they can pay. The SWIFT, Visa, MasterCard, they're all out of Russia right now. So there's a major uncertainty there. For instance, one of the greatest economists alive in Turkey right now, Mr. Mahfi Elmas, wrote a blog yesterday. He estimates the loss to tourism revenues at about $15 billion compared to the original projection of $35 billion. So that's the big hit. And the hit could be as big as being forced to finance an extra $30 billion worth of goods and services that we didn't plan on. The second big hit is, as you said, obviously on inflation. That doesn't only come from higher dollar price of the stuff we import, but also because of the psychological impact of the Ukraine shock, which somehow caused panic among Turkish retailers who are once again re-dollarizing. That's switching back their wealth and savings to hard currency, as a result of which Turkish lira has depreciated 10% vis-a-vis the dollar since the beginning of the year. That right there puts 3% on top of consumer inflation. The second item, or the third item, wherever I am, third item, is of course, under these conditions, it becomes more difficult and more expensive to borrow abroad. Turkey is heavily dependent on foreign credit. Just to give you average numbers, in the next 365 days, Turkish entities, including the Treasury, will have to pay off roughly $170 billion of maturing debt, as well as finance a current account deficit, which could range anywhere between $30 to $50 billion. So that's a huge amount of foreign borrowing. It's not that Turkey doesn't have the credit rating to borrow. It's just that, as you mentioned, on top of the Ukraine crisis, raising credit risk across the world for countries close to Russia and Ukraine, we're also going to suffer from Fed interest rates. So as Fed hikes rates, obviously the entities that lend to Turkey would want to reflect that to the interest cost they charge. It's difficult to estimate a cost, but I think the biggest impact there is that foreign loans are become so costly, given Turkey's depressed economy. Some of the companies and financial institutions would rather pay off their debt than renew their borrowing. But that means there is going to be more of a currency outflow from Turkey. And more importantly, domestic financial conditions will tighten. The fourth is kind of complicated for our audience who are from abroad. To deal with currency pressures, the AKP administration invented something called FX protected TL deposit scheme, where the bank pays you a fixed interest rate, as it is the custom everywhere in the world. But on top of that, the government tops up your interest rate income with an amount equal to the rate of depreciation of the Turkish lira against the dollar. Now, obviously, as the dollar appreciates against Turkish lira, the cost of that scheme to the Treasury and the central bank increase. Again, very difficult to give a number because all depends on where the exchange rate settles. But why is that a cost? It's a cost because if the Treasury is saddled with these additional insurance payments related to the scheme, then obviously it has less money to spend on the poor, on military, on whatever. So in many ways, this is a very big shock. And according to rough estimates, it can subtract 4 percentage points from this year's GDP growth, which would put Turkey in a mild recession.
Mild, hopefully. And so far, Turkey has not joined in.
Go ahead.
And so far, Turkey has not joined in with the economic sanctions on Russia and has been attempting to maintain a cordial relationship, though Turkey has been sort of playing both sides. However, the sanctions have dealt a devastating blow to the Russian economy, as you have said. Now, considering the real possibility that Turkey has lost a crucial trade partner, how does Turkey recover and move forward? Or really, is a post-Russia model for the Turkish economy even possible under these conditions?
I don't think we can detach so easily from Russia. It's not only the stuff we buy and sell, but it's also the pipelines and the nuclear reactor that's being built by a subsidiary of Gazprom, I believe. So far, Turkey has handled this very thorny diplomatic situation with finesse, and I hope that continues in the sense that we will be able to maintain our cordial relationship to combatants. But economically, we cannot really escape the costs. Obviously, I think Turkey is right in declaring that it shall not abide by the UN or United States sanctions on Russia, as it hadn't in terms of Iran. And I think Turkey will receive a waiver in the sense that, look, I mean, I get 40% of our natural gas from Russian pipelines. This is not this is not the quantity that you can replace from anywhere else. The problem here, and I don't think the international community would look, poorly on Turkey for refusing to abide by these sanctions. The problem is, Ukraine war has been such a human disaster, and the Ukrainians have reflected their pain so successfully to the social media that on top of the official government sanctions, we're seeing increasing shareholder and customer pressure on Western companies not to do business with Russia. And a lot of the Turkish goods that are being exported are licensed or use foreign patents, or in fact produced by international companies in Turkey or joint ventures. I understand that exporting those goods would become extremely difficult. Right now, I think I would imagine the Turkish public opinion is pro-Ukraine, but on the other hand, there's such a severe strain of anti-Americanism, anti-imperialism in Turkey that I don't think there's going to be a huge backlash if we don't support Ukraine more actively or if you continue to export to Russia. But at the end, imagining a situation where this war will not end in a way that would ease the pain of Ukrainians will be impacted by these sanctions, whether we intend to employ them or not.
I see, sir. And lastly, one who has followed the Turkish currency crisis of 2021 cannot help but be reminded of the lira's collapse last year. On the eve of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the lira was trading roughly 13.5 against the dollar. After the invasion, it jumped to 14.5, regained some value, but has been slowly devaluing over the week, just as we were all elated that the Turkish lira had regained some semblance of stability. Now we are reminded of the rapid and frequent crashes of last year. Now, what are the chances that the lira is heading into another crisis, and do you think we could recover from it this time?
Given foreseeable scenarios in Ukraine war, which are mostly negative, I think there's at least another 80% chance of Turkish lira collapsing once again. And to be specific, going back to the levels that we had experienced in December, which saw dollar-TL exchange rate soar to 18, which is a historic high, at least in this universe. The reason I think so is that, A, as we discussed at the beginning of this conversation, suddenly there is this $30 billion gap in your foreign account that you need to finance. And everyone in Turkey knows that that's going to be a tough bill to fill. 2, psychological impact. I mean, the confidence in government and institutions was extremely weak. Not my personal opinion, that's what the polls tell me. And even though the Erdoğan administration hasn't played this badly so far, I think there's an understandable apprehension among the public that at some point there would be another fatal policy error. In any case, I think even if we don't get into this behavioral theories, the natural instinct of the human being is to rush for safe havens. And in Turkey, safe havens is dollar and gold. So, I mean, give me a scenario, or let the audience imagine a scenario where things go to status quo ex ante, that is, as if the Ukraine war has not happened. In that case, of course, I would be more optimistic on Turkish lira. But given the facts on the ground and the fact that this is going to have long-term reverberations, both in terms of geopolitics and the realm of economics, I'm afraid unless current policies have improved radically, we're heading for another currency collapse.
Fair enough. That was not the answer that we wanted to hear, but I think that was the answer that we were expecting. Mr. Yeşilada, thank you for making sense of it all. It was a pleasure having you, and thank you for being able to join us tonight.
It's my pleasure. Anytime you want.
And in politics, main opposition party chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu visits the predominantly ethnic Kurdish province of Diyarbakır. This is yet another stop in Kılıçdaroğlu's tour of reconciliation with groups that were marginalized by Turkey's secular parties in the past. Kılıçdaroğlu landed in the province Wednesday night with the aim of drawing votes from the Kurdish bloc, as it is believed that no coalition can hope to attain majority without it. Though Kılıçdaroğlu received a warm welcome, not everyone is excited. Many in Diyarbakır say that they don't have high hopes for CHP whatsoever. Medyascope's very own Ferit Aslan and Hıdır Göktaş were on the scene.
Main opposition party chair Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu landed in Diyarbakır Wednesday night and was greeted with a massive welcome party. The following morning, Kılıçdaroğlu met with local opinion leaders. 11 others joined in on the meeting, including the spouses of late local opinion leaders that were murdered in politically charged homicides, such as the spouse of Diyarbakır Bar Association Chief Tahir Elçi, local teacher Zübeyir Akaç, and imprisoned former mayor Selçuk Mızraklı. Later in his visit, Kılıçdaroğlu went on a walking tour and talked to locals about their problems before speaking at the Sezai Karakaç Cultural Center. The CHP hasn't come to this region much. I am aware. It is our fault. We did not come. We did not sit. We did not talk. We sat in Ankara and spoke flowery words. I understand your troubles, and we will solve these problems together. However, not everyone in the province has confidence in Kılıçdaroğlu. Medyascope interviewed the local electorate to get a beat on the public opinion.
Demokrasinin yolu Diyarbakır'dan geçer ve Diyarbakır'la helalleşmeye gideceğim diyen Cumhuriyet Halk Partisi Genel Başkanı Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu uzun bir aradan sonra Diyarbakır'a geliyor. Peki Diyarbakırlıların muhalefetten ve Kılıçdaroğlu'ndan beklentileri ne? İşte cevaplar. Kılıçdaroğlu geliyor buraya, muhalefet partisinin lideri. Ondan bir beklentiniz var mı?
Ne zaman geliyor?
2 gün sonra geliyor.
Geliyorsun ama.
Bir beklentiniz var mı ondan? Bir şey istiyor musunuz?
Hiç kimseye beklentimiz yoktu.
Yoktu.
Yok.
Yani ondan bir talebiniz yok mu?
Yok. Hiç kimseye bir talep beklemiyoruz.
Beklemiyoruz.
Kılıçdaroğlu'ndan da bir şey beklemiyoruz. O çok zayıf bir adam.
Çok siyasete karşı umutsuzluk mu arttı?
Vallahi öyle, evet. Evet.
İnanmıyorsunuz abi.
İnanmıyoruz, yok.
Peki helalleşeceğim diyor.
Boş laf.
Bir şey çıkmaz diyor.
Çok bir şey çıkmaz.
Yani hiçbir şey değişmeyecek. Her şey aynı yine. Gelip bir çayımızı içecek, gidecek.
Yani bir beklentiniz yok.
Yok, ne beklenti olacak, yok. Kim gelirse gelsin. Hayat pahalılığı biz kendimiz yapıyoruz.
Yani hayat zor diyorsun.
Zor tabii. Daha hiçbir şey kalmadı ki.
Siyasilerden bir beklenti yok.
Yok, hepsi aynı, hepsi aynı.
Teşekkür ediyorum.
Gerçek siyasetçi içeride.
Demirtaş.
Evet, gerçek siyasetçi içeride işte. Diğerleri boş.
Beklentim var abi gerçekten. Mesela özellikle onun hani partisinden hani adaylarından şey var. Mansur Yavaş abi. Mesela onu Ankara'ya yaptığı hani şeyler abi. O yüzden mesela bizim bayağı beklentimiz var abi CHP'den. Evet abi. CHP'den, Mansur Yavaş'tan, Ekrem İmamoğlu'ndan bayağı beklentimiz var abi.
And this marks a historic week in Turkey's calendar. Israeli President Isaac Herzog has finally paid President Erdoğan a visit in Ankara on Wednesday. Now, Turkey and Israel had maintained no official relations for years. Turkish-Israeli relations first began deteriorating in 2008 after Turkey condemned Israel's incursion into the Gaza Strip and called it state-sponsored terrorism. In 2009, Turkey banned Israel from participating in the Anatolian Eagle military exercise. And in the world of foreign relations, joint military exercises are a big deal. In 2010, Israeli forces boarded a Turkish civilian flotilla destined for Gaza and shot several men on board who attacked the soldiers with melee weapons. Turkey then downgraded diplomatic ties with Israel and suspended military cooperation afterward. There had been attempts made to normalize relations since, but all had fallen by the wayside. Well, now with the new government in power in Israel and President Erdogan's new mantra of making friends, not war, it appears that regional stability and peace may be a step closer.
Turkey is determined to continue its steps toward normalization in its foreign policy in 2022. This week, an Israeli head of state visits Turkey for the first time in 15 years. President Erdoğan welcomed Israeli President Isaac Herzog in Ankara on Wednesday, after months of rumors that the long-awaited meeting might take place. President Erdoğan said that a new era will begin in Turkey-Israel relations with this visit by Herzog, and stressed that the development and strengthening of relations between the two countries is of great importance for both Turkey and regional stability. Speaking after Erdoğan, Herzog thanked Erdoğan for the warm welcome and said that the talks were productive. This is a very important moment in relations between our countries, and I feel it is a great privilege for both of us to lay the foundations for the development of friendly relations between our states, peoples, and to building bridges of critical importance for us. In their statements, both Herzog and Erdoğan said that Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu is expected to meet with Israeli Foreign Minister Yair Lapid. Media reports stated that the two would discuss the reopening of embassies in both countries. However, this claim was not confirmed by Herzog or Erdoğan. According to Channel 12's report, Herzog and Erdoğan also talked about Turkey's relationship with Hamas and especially the recent visits of Hamas leaders to Ankara. Channel 13 also suggested that as a part of improving relations, Israel has asked Erdoğan to extradite the top Hamas leaders believed to be currently in Turkey, most notably Saleh al-Aruri, the senior commander of Hamas's military wing and deputy political chief. Another issue discussed at the meeting was the natural gas exploration that Turkey started in the eastern Mediterranean. The natural gas reserves discovered in the eastern Mediterranean has long been a point of contention of Mediterranean states.
We end tonight's program on a somber note. Today is the 8th anniversary of Berkin Elvan's death. In 2013, during the infamous Gezi protests, Berkin Elvan, on his way to the store to buy bread, was struck in the head by a gas canister fired by a police officer. Consequently, Elvan remained in a coma for 269 days. He weighed no more than 35 pounds when he finally lost his life on March 11th, 2014. After 8 years of legal battles, despite being sentenced to over 16 years in 2011, the suspect, Fatih Dalgalı, is still unconvicted. Since then, every 11th of March, we mourn the loss of Berkin Elvan in hopes of justice and closure for his family. And with that, that's it for us in This Week in Turkey. I am Murat, Türsan, and thank you for joining us.
Türkiye'nin sivil, bağımsız, özgür ve çoğulcu bir medya ortamına ihtiyacı var. Medyascope, 20 Ağustos 2015'te bu ihtiyacı karşılamak üzere yola çıktı. Ama yolumuz uzun. Bu yolculukta bize Patreon veya YouTube'un katıl butonu üzerinden katkıda bulunabilirsiniz. Destek verin, sizinle güçlenelim.